Hello, my friends. Welcome to New Kids with a Shop, brought to you by the Arcade Comics, Collectibles, and Games, located in an uncannily warm Fort Wayne, Indiana. I am Matt Cade.
And I am Craig Ray, and this episode is X-rated.
Arcade.
Hey everybody, welcome back to New Kids with a Shop. Today we are joined by Shayne Pace.
It's great to be here.
Rick Shupe.
Hello. Rick.
This episode is called X-rated because we are going to be talking about the X-Men and we're going to be rating them. It's very, very smart, Shayne. Excellent job.
Yes. No, I think it was yours.
Maybe.
No, wait, no. It was mine, but you, yeah.
No.
It was a group effort.
Well, I was throwing out the next Spider-Man movie titles is what I was doing. And you think you did this one?
Yeah. What is your title for the next Spider-Man movie?
Oh, it's the one where Miles dies and it's going to be Into the Spider-Hearse.
Bam.
It's dumb.
And we're just starting, gang. We're just starting.
So on this, I think we were discussing, different topics, and we decided to do, give some Marvel love because there hasn't been a ton of that. It's not that we don't enjoy it. We just, I don't know. It hasn't worked out as far as the news cycles and whatever else. But
When you talk Marvel, you got to talk that.
when you talk Marvel, you got to talk X-Men.
So, Rick, how was it on day one? How was that?
That was an exciting day. I've mentioned several times here in the store that it was a summer of '63. I was in a local pharmacy where I bought a lot of my comics, and there on the spinner rack was Avengers #1, Uncanny X-Men #1, and My Greatest Adventure 80 from DC, which was the first Doom
Patrol. Yep.
Doom. So it was very good.
That's
very
a
good
fantastic day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And there are more than a few passing similarities between the Doom Patrol and X-Men.
There were rumors even back then that there had been some chatter between the companies under the boards, so that people didn't know that they were stealing ideas or borrowing ideas or working on a riff on an idea. And so that's why that early Doom Patrol and X-Men have a similar leader and maybe an idea about the creation of a team with people that were freaks or had some unusual abilities that
Outcasts from
societies that didn't.
So,
And Niles, the leader Chief wasn't just the leader. He was even he was wheelchair bound.
Yes.
Yeah.
scientist. Yeah.
Scientist.
They love their big houses.
And as we come to see, he and Charles both like to keep their secrets.
Yeah. And so, talking about that first issue, I actually recently, I just wanted to compare notes with you on that one. I read the first issue again recently. I'd read it before, like in a facsimile form. And there were a few things that... So I know the whole history behind the book. So X-Men was like a response saying, Stan was like, all right, enough with all of these people that have things done to them. People aren't going to buy this for so long, where it's like all of these accidents occur and there's all these heroes. Like there has to be some way of doing it where they're naturally occurring. So by birth, the mutant thing. And it opens up the door to saying these abilities could be absolutely anything. Like, oh, I'm a mutant because I was born with my tongue being 4 times the length, right? That could be like a mutation as compared to like what type of accident would occur, like a gamma bomb or whatever that would cause that same thing. That was the actual explanation on it. And it was also said that Stan was saying he was trying to make something more grown up and more mature instead of like catering to the demographic of the kiddie books. It was supposed to handle more adult themes and things like that. So that first issue is painful because everything is just, and Shayne and I were talking about it earlier, all of the powers are described every time they use them.
I'll argue that those first 67 issues are mostly painful, but that's, we're reading years on.
Right, reading them as a child, they didn't seem that way to me.
And that's what I wanted to do is I wanted to get that
exciting.
take.
As a boy, you were seeing interesting characters like the Beast was like one of our favorites. We loved that athleticism that he had and his big vocabulary, which was really unknown in comics at the time.
No, that first
He'd show off with each fight.
Because remember, like it wasn't like a danger room thing. It was Professor X there be like, come on, Beast, show us your amazing blah, blah, blah. And he like jumped up and he like had like, he was on that one pin with the one finger and balancing and stuff. And it was just, I don't know. It's funny for me. It's hard. Like we had talked about this with movies and other things. Like going back and reading that. That's why I enjoy your perspective because you were there.
I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
So it seemed really good to me, and also it was very. I was sensitive to the tragedy of Cyclops loving Marvel girl Jean Grey, and she was very pretty and smart and everything you would want in a girlfriend, right? But he couldn't feel comfortable around her because every time he took off his glasses, he might blow her head off with an optic beam. So
Right.
there was a tragedy there. He wanted to be with her, and he loved her and cared for her, but he couldn't. Make that connection.
There was even though like the whole through line through those issues too, where Warren, the angel, this beautiful rich kid, was also
All money.
and he kept chauffeuring her everywhere. Hey, why don't we go out tonight, Jean? And she would do it, but she was like, I wish Scott would ask me. And yeah,
I loved that. To think that maybe I had a chance as a kid when I thought my own life was a little bit outcast.
The funniest thing, when Jean first shows up, it was to me because of everything that ends up happening, like with Iceman and stuff. So there's the panel where she first pulls. There's like the cab out front, and she's like walking up the steps, and all of them are sitting there in the window. And Scott's like, Scott just has a thought bubble because it was internal, but Beast and Angel and them are like saying, "Oh man, she's so beautiful," and blah blah blah. And Iceman's walking the other direction, saying, "It's a girl, big deal," which is hilarious because I think at the time. They were writing it because he was the young one. Like maybe he didn't care about that kind of stuff yet. But now today it works like as a double meaning because
years later
he'd come out.
Are you kidding me? I
No,
didn't know that.
it's in the very first issue. So it says it's a girl, big deal. So now, I think it was because of his age is how it was written. But
When
now
he was
it works
15,
on.
I think.
yeah, Bobby, yeah, and that's what Craig and I were talking about too. Is I never quite put it together that Bobby was always a couple years younger than the rest of the group, and so he was always like the kid brother. And also, he was always holding back, as
Yes.
we would later learn. He was always an Omega level mutant. He was always just never living quite up to what he could do.
Like that first one, do you remember? He dressed himself up as a snowman.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the one thing in the whole issue that I couldn't really swallow.
That was it.
It didn't make sense.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
So Stan and Jack, what did they do? 18 or 19 issues?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I'm just going by memory, but
So they created the entire framework, though. I mean, at that point, Magneto, the Brotherhood, Sentinels, were they? No, they were later. They were
Roy
later.
Thomas and Neil Adams.
Yep, that's later.
For Trask, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry. But Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants and all that stuff.
The Blob.
The Blob was early. Yeah. It's amazing, though, like, no matter what I thought of the stories, that everything was there. All the tools and the ingredients that would eventually become these great X-Men stories were all there at the beginning.
That was one thing that was fantastic because each issue was explosive that way. There was the Vanisher, there was the Juggernaut.
Yep.
You just kept getting great characters or villains each issue. Even though the team may not have been the most exciting team compared to the Avengers, they still were interesting. And to see them face these foes and often get knocked down at first, that was pretty fun as a kid. To
And then Rally. It's weird, though, because I read all the Doom Patrol from 63 on, and I love those stories. So there's just something about the X-Men that, but then again, they didn't have the longevity. They didn't create decades worth of stories until Grant Morrison in the 80s.
I don't know what happened. I know I told you I was subscribing to the comic and because I was having trouble finding it, so it wasn't selling as well as maybe DC hoped. And I thought maybe the first 10 or so issues were really, really exceptional, and then it started getting a little silly. And I think maybe that was because
Was a death knell.
the sales weren't doing well, and they were trying anything they could to help the book go. But I thought what was cool about the Doom Patrol versus the X-Men is I'd kind of been in the hearing that the X-Men were going to be kind of troubled outcasts, and I didn't see that.
No, not at all.
They actually had some, like Warren was
In a positive.
super wealthy and had fancy cars and
Yeah.
had all the money in the world.
And Professor X was a positive, at least at the
he
time,
was
role
kind
model
at
type
the
thing.
time.
Yeah.
Whereas the Doom Patrol was, like Cliff Steele was in an automobile accident. I mean, a racing accident.
Oh, yeah. And Rita used to be beautiful. Now she has to try to maintain her. Yeah, through her.
The
through her-
Blob.
But I will say, like reading through, and it was just like I told you, reading the old Batgirls with the elongated man backups. Once you're reading them through those first 67 issues before it was canceled initially, and you get to issue 54, and all of a sudden Neil Adams' art is there, and it is just like
with a sentinel reaching through the room and King Kong fashion to grab.
And it becomes like just next level. And of course, like that's where you get Havoc's energy rings. Those are
Neil's greatest costume ever. Probably.
Invention. Oh, I love the design. Yeah, and he stays on 54 to 58.
If anything, the power generated by those concentric circles from his chest, it really, you know, when you're reading a book and can feel power like that coming off the page, super.
He was so next level. I mean, he was so like above.
And his helmet, you know, even following that design in a strange way. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant art.
Yeah. But, I mean, to be honest, that I read the first few. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. Like, my hat tipped off to you, Shayne, as far as like trying to. You powered through it.
Yeah, I got through them.
I'm so shocked.
But I started keeping in mind. So when I started,
And I love the Silver Age mostly, but that was they were rough for me.
It didn't start for me till Giant Size. Is the reality of it. As far as I mean,
It didn't start for most people.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it
the popularity
got
hit.
canceled.
Yeah.
I mean, it got canceled at 67, and then
Reprints till
it reprints until 94.
94.
They just reprinted the first.
I was buying the reprints though because they had cool covers on some of them. Like Gil
Did they-
Kane did
they
a
changed
few,
them?
and yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
Put new covers on every time they released the issue.
And then Lynn Wein and
Yep.
Dave Cockrum.
Dave Cockrum came in with the Giant Size in 75
Yes,
Yes.
1975.
with an all new team, and not just an all new team, but they were international all of a sudden because all 5 of the original members were all
Probably local to New York.
uniquely American, and then these
Brooklyn even.
these we're going from Russia to
And they made a
Ireland.
point to do it, to show it too, as far as like we're in here, blah blah blah. I do have an issue. I was gonna bring it up with the Giant Size as far as recruiting Storm. Storm was a little weird for me because she shows up and like they were all like naked. Like the only reason why you didn't see her was because her hair was covering. And it's like,
Jeez.
And then it's like they pull her over and it's like, oh, now that she's a civilized X-Men, let's give her this revealing costume instead.
Not just that, but it's like Colossus is from Russia, Banshee is from Ireland, Storm is from Africa. Like, well, that's a continent.
It's an entire continent.
Jeez, and that's a whole other issue with that. But no, I like that. What's that?
Did you know that originally that was a male?
Storm?
Yeah.
Why did they change
I
it?
think it was called Tempest, which ended up being.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I knew it was
character.
Tempest. And I knew that Nightcrawler and a lot of them were intended to be Legion of Superheroes.
Yes.
And they were rejected by
David just
DC, so
left that.
they was like, fine, and which is wild because they just fit so well. And also, they took a one-off nobody character from Hulk 180 and 181
180.
that nobody, this Canadian little guy that nobody knew, and
Oh,
Put
he's
him-
just a little guy.
threw him in there.
A little guy.
It's just so weird. Like after all these years to think about how it all started. Because do you remember Giant Size? What Wolverine does in that issue to join the X-Men? He quits working for the government. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm out of here.
They later tied that
no
down.
more of this
Yes,
government
yes,
job. I'm going with
because,
Professor X.
He was Weapon X,
Yeah.
which we later find as Weapon 10,
Yep.
which is a brilliant conceit. And there are weapons 1 through 9. The original Weapon 1 being, of course, Steve Rogers.
Yep. And it was
First attempt at that.
yeah.
And then you find out that they know each other. Because I've got a story
Erskine
behind it.
died, and then
they fought.
and he just continued on with the government instead of
Right. I mean, that's a nice conceit. But again, it's one of those X-Men things where it's like, that wasn't planned out at the beginning. It was
No.
Weapon X because it sounded cool, but then it works out because in the nature of this medium, this wonderful medium, you can do stuff like that.
And they do a great job, like right off the bat. You feel terrible for Nightcrawler, right? Like you're introduced to Nightcrawler with him running up the side of buildings and teleporting as far as people shitting all over him.
All the mutants that we'd seen before,
Still pretty-ish.
ostensibly, yeah, they could pass as it were, and Kurt couldn't, and he was very devout in his faith, and but despite looking like a demon, he was a staunch, I think Catholic. And
sir.
and he doubled like it like strengthened his faith, God doesn't make mistakes, so I'm not one. It's wonderful. And then his outcast nature, him and Wolverine form this tight, close friendship that you see play out over the decades, which I've always liked. He calls him Elf.
Yep.
The only person that can like call,
Yes.
hey, Elf.
How did you feel about his later image inducer so he could fraternize with normal people without being recognized.
I think that was more for the ease of storytelling than for the actual character. Like fine for Kurt, but I think there's certain stories where he has to go hang out with them places. So it's like, what do we do? I don't know. Image inducer.
Well, his ability is extremely helpful.
Sure.
But on top of that, his personality is a personality you would want there.
Oh, he's a wonderful
regardless.
presence. He's a wonderful
Regardless of but minus all of the.
I like that
ogling.
whenever he bamfs, you smell it. There's a gross.
Yep.
And do you remember why it's called the Banff?
No.
It's a city in Canada, and they were doing a little tribute. John Byrne had some influence, I guess, at that point.
Well, yeah. Well, so let's talk about then the. So Lynn Wein and Dave Cockrum, they weren't around much. They were just kind of there to like bring them back and introduce these characters. But then it was with issue 94. There was a guy he'd done a few Iron Fists.
They were throwing X-Men was so bad they were throwing him a bone to being like, you're gonna have to cut your teeth on this, and we'll see where you end up.
Young Chris Claremont.
Yeah.
Took over, and this was the start of a 16-year run on this team, on these characters. Everything that you love about the X-Men, you can pretty much trace to Claremont. And then initially,
John Byrne.
John Byrne.
Yep.
John Byrne. John Byrne
defined Wolverine.
Yes, he's so. Well, the first thing he did with Wolverine is like, well, he's a hunter in the woods. Why is he wearing yellow and blue? He puts him in the brown suit. So already, like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, everybody, the government's here.
That's
what? That guy in the blue and yellow. Yeah.
He's stalking me. How do you know? Because I can see him from 100 yards away. He's wearing neon. Yeah. He also, he made Wolverine, this, badass with a heart of gold, shorter, stockier.
Yes, I think people maybe or not all the fans know that he's considered a short character in the comics.
5'3".
Very.
And of course, in the film, they found
stout.
a great actor to play.
Yeah, great actor,
tall.
but he's
But he's 6 foot.
this tall Adonis. But yeah, he embodied the character very well. Yeah.
So I started in. We'll work our way up there. I started in 91, so
As did most. But
Wolverine's was all of the rage in the 90s.
Who were missing from that giant size lineup?
Colossus, man.
Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler,
Wolverine.
Banshee, Wolverine. Scott was still there.
Scott came back.
Yeah.
At the end,
he was the only one.
Yeah.
Because and they had to go rescue the X-Men from Krakoa, I believe.
Yes. The Living Island. So
Which will also come back.
Yes, absolutely. So this is where things get immediately following that, or around issue 120, 121 or so. Is that when Phoenix?
Yeah, it was. Yep. So you get the Phoenix Force is introduced. Rick, do you remember reading that? Did they know it was as as seismic as it turned out to be the Phoenix Saga?
The original story, as I remember it, and my memory might be poor here, but it was just they thought that Jean was stepping up like a Pokemon, and suddenly had her mental powers had gravitated to this great power.
So there's a Jean Grey evolution
Yes.
into.
We didn't know it was an alien entity that had possessed her body.
Right, okay.
Actually replaced her at one point.
Yeah.
But that's that ruins the story a little bit to tell that ahead of time. But.
Sure. And then
Starjammers are all involved. Right?
well, the Starjammers, where we find out Scott and Alex Summers, Cyclops and Havoc's dad, Corsair, who they thought had left him, which I guess he did. But he went out and became a space pirate with the Starjammers.
Now you
With a name like Corsair, he became a pirate.
And he had a fine mustache. So,
But you remember that Dave Cockrum included those because it was his riff on the Legion of Superheroes. So
yeah.
No, and it's cool how it all works. But so we've talked a little bit about this, but to try to give some understanding, it went from being canceled to at this point, it is now their most popular book.
Yeah, by the early 80s, it was the most popular thing they had.
Chris Claremont and John Byrne really did a lot, although Dave Cockrum also.
Because, and I guess we didn't really set it up as far as formatting, but I want to take the opportunity to talk about like favorite runs, and Dark Phoenix is universally recognized. Like that was out of the gate pretty great, but I think the next one that came along, and it was only technically 2 issues because there's like 5 issues after.
Is it God Loves Man Kills?
No, my favorite is the wait. I just blanked because you said that.
Sorry.
Very kitty centric.
the Christmas episode?
No.
Oh yeah.
So-
I love that one where she's
great.
getting chased through the.
Yeah.
That's
No.
mansion.
That
What about when she tries on all the clothes, all the costumes?
the future Days of Future Past.
Oh, Days of Future. Ow, yeah. Sorry.
No. You're fine. So Phoenix wraps up. Got an arc in between that kind of sets things up, and then Days of Future Past, which is widely regarded as one of the best stories ever.
Yes.
is 2 issues.
It's amazing. That's only 2 issues. The economy of storytelling, like what they you see how wordy it is.
Well, it's not really. It has 4 times. Claremont uses 4 times the amount of words that
He's
normal books
going
do.
to
so-
yeah.
But that takes back to the tradition of Stan. Stan was
Right.
very verbose too, and then it's not always that way.
I'm not picking. I'm just saying
Explaining
2 issues. It can be done.
The old trope of explaining the action as they're doing it. It's like, well, I don't need it twice.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are pictures, yes. So it's kind of like,
that's how they. That's
like
how it
I'm
is.
going to reach my hand into this drawer now and pull out a fork. No, a spoon? Question mark.
But it
you know,
was
it's
a,
like, you know,
Zoinks.
And they explain their powers with each
Again, I have
episode.
the
with each
youthful
issue.
perspective on those things, so my memory maybe is
no. It's sometimes it fills it up a little bit.
But the story is so good.
the story is
characterization's
fantastic.
so good.
and the
it's-
fact that they can do it in 2 issues. That's it.
Yeah.
As far as everything, the breadth of it. So those of you that have only seen the movies and don't understand the difference is, so in the comic book, Kitty Pryde is the one that actually does all of the work. She doesn't send Wolverine back like that. She herself goes back. She's old Kitty in her younger body.
And I should point out Chris Claremont. She's a complete creation of Chris Claremont, and I think that was always his favorite to write.
Well, and it kind of shows
Yeah.
because she was always fun from the get-go. It was yet another one of those younger female characters that Wolverine was always warm to.
First time that we see him take on the father figure role that he would in the future.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. I'm just hitting that pit stop because I figured we'd hit the milestone ones, and that one is far and away my
so-
favorite
in the
X-Men story.
It's terrific, and
Yeah.
in the film it was Wolverine that took lead, and Blink wasn't in. She wasn't rated yet. Neither was Bishop.
Warpath was already dead.
yeah,
right?
Well, Warpath
He lasted an issue.
issue.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, though, that the original X-Men, that is not as popular apparently, did have the Sentinels created by
Yes.
Roy Thomas and Neil Adams, and they're a big part of that.
That's right.
They absolutely are.
Oliver Draft.
And they wouldn't have the drama without them.
No,
Yeah.
and that's what
great.
we were saying before. That's why I would make sure we touched on it before. And all of the ingredients for these stories existed during those initial issues.
I mean, the
Like
pilot,
Magneto,
the pilot for
everything.
the 93 cartoon was Night of the Sentinels.
Yep.
Yeah, the Sentinels are terrifying, and
They make great toys.
First thing that happened was they were showing up to Jubilees, right?
Yes.
And they show up to
Yes.
take her. Yeah.
which that's actually really close to Jubilee's first appearance too, in the comics. But we'll get there. So if we're at like around the 120 point, because 129, 130 are the 1-2 punch of introduction of Kitty Pryde, where it says, welcome to the X-Men. Hope you enjoy the experience. Hope you survive the experience. And then 130, Dazzler and Emma Frost. And anybody who's trying to complete a run. I mean, from 94 to 180. 181.
They're not at your comic book
It's going to
store.
be hard to find any of them, yeah, because something happened in each one. The stories were so good, so essential, and this is something that, like, again, it was the most popular book at
Yeah.
the time. So, yeah, people who wanted it still have it, and they've kept it.
Well, and then Matt and I think we've seen the prettiest copy of 94 we probably ever will see in our entire life.
Did it come through?
Yeah, I didn't need to press it. I did, and then we sent it on to get graded. And
Nice.
it
I saw your first appearance of Havoc too.
No, that was that was one gentleman. No, I was talking about Darren's
yeah.
in the box.
Yep,
like
yep,
he,
yep, yep.
so this guy, man, comes. He had like a, I don't know. It's probably
He used to work at Broadway
yeah,
Comics.
worked at Broadway, like what back in the
Might have
day.
been my issue.
Yeah, no, he had
Local
like
boys will remember that.
immaculate copy of 94.
Well, he had doubles of almost everything except for 94, but 94 was put in a bag and board, double boarded back to front, and put in a box, and he has not touched
Never
it.
touched it.
30 some years, and then he pulls it out, and
It's like a 9.6, 9.8 copy.
Well, it was a 9.6 out of the bag, and we got it to 9.8, but all it had was just a little wave on it, but it was the prettiest
Which turned it to a
That's
$15,000
book. Yeah.
hey,
It is very, very pretty.
nice work if you can get it.
So
Oh, I want to tell everybody right now before anybody else does that We also have a first appearance of Mr. Moon Knight. in
Yeah,
the
we got
store.
that yesterday. So if
Yes.
you're listening,
Beautiful.
Craig got lucky on a collection. We have a lot of Moon Knight, but
yep.
But in the pop career of Phil Collins was not the only thing that the Reagan and Thatcher 80s was pushing to greater and greater creative heights, because Claremont was on a roll this decade. We got The Brood, which is
you
essentially...
were working on that one for a while, weren't you?
Just
Off the
I don't
top,
know.
is it? No, it's
Is anybody
good.
deny Phil Collins?
I'm feeling Aliens coming on.
Exactly. So The Brood, which is essentially the aliens, but they too over the next 3 decades became their own thing. But I was working towards the Morlocks,
Yes.
the Morlock tunnels, and their leader Callisto. And so I remember. Now I'm just gonna go. We'll just go willy nilly. But do you remember when Forge tried to depower Rogue? And Storm stepped in, and then for like a few years, Storm, the most powerful, was depowered, but she was still an X-Man, and like she beat Scott at one point without her powers, while Scott had his powers. And then when they go to the Morlock tunnels, she challenged the leader of the Morlocks because she has to save Kitty Pryde because Caliban has kidnapped Kitty Pryde, and now he's keeping her as a child bride.
Which that was always odd in the Logan movie. It's like he was.
In the Logan movie, he was this timid.
Yeah.
Man, you try to force a 14-year-old to marry you in the sewer.
Is that is that a New York thing or?
No, it's something. It's something.
So, and Storm had this fierce. Storm glommed onto Kitty and had this fierce maternal protection thing for Kitty for years. And so once she beats Callisto, and then now she's the de facto leader of the Morlocks.
Yep.
Saves Kitty, and a while later she got her powers back. But it was always cool to see like Storm, who was always the ultimate badass. Like, oh no, even without power, Storm will run shit, and it was great. That's just one. And that's all before the events that we're getting.
And I'll just throw it in there now because it's relevant. It appeared Rogue is one of those characters where I think she was inserted as a plot device and ended up coming out on the other side as a really fully formed character.
Both her and Captain Marvel, they're inextricably linked, but both of them were just. It took decades before they became the characters that they are, but they became great characters.
Which coincidentally,
Fully formed, they were not.
Avengers Annual number 10 is the first appearance of Rogue and Mystique and Brotherhood.
Ugly book though.
Ugly cover,
It's a ugly
but
book.
that starts off. So I'm saying going with that, the very first thing that happens is Carol in the hospital bed being completely depowered for like 5. She didn't have powers for like 5 years, right? Right. So Rogue took hers. Then she did the same thing. They used that same thing to do it to Storm, just as a plot device, right? So she was kind of thrown in there, like because Rogue started off as a villain. She had her connection was with Mystique,
She was with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So it was odd that they were like in an Avengers book, but there was
And it was cool because Charles is the one that when she wanted to be part of the team, Charles let her be part of the team, and the X-Men all objected. And I think it was Storm that stood up and it's like,
yeah,
we're about outcasts and second chances, and it was really cool. And yeah, she ended up being a great addition to the team.
because I got around to that way late. Because like I said, my Rogue is post redesign.
Yeah.
Gambit and Rogue, but go ahead.
Once Jim Lee fixed her
Yeah.
outfit.
I just was wanting to point out that theme, though, of being outcasts and to give everyone getting a second chance was still original
Yes.
1963 X-Men as part of the concept, but also that the Morlocks, because we have a science fiction, following too. That's from H.G. Wells' Time Machine.
Yes. Yeah.
Our underground.
So was the
Well,
Callisto too. The Callisto was the
There you
time
go.
machine.
And then there was a little bit of the TV Beauty and the Beast at that time, too, for
Yeah.
the underground dwellers. But I just wanted to mention that for people who are fans of other things that we also like.
Yeah, because he was
There were
pulling
other
from-
influences
from
that
a lot
Chris
of
was
different
looking
places.
at.
Well, probably just whatever he saw. I mean, that's television.
Sure.
That's yes.
But he's a great writer, and he was able to make
he did
his own.
This amalgamation became this great. Yeah.
He might not be the best person to meet in person, but
we have to tell that story. We'll tell it later.
we'll tell.
because they got to a point though where
funny.
it hit critical mass with mutants in the book because they kept bringing in new characters and everything, and he was with as I know the story, he was with Louis Simonson and Anna Cinti, and he was like, how do we get rid of some of these mutants? And Chris Claremont was like, well, just kill them all. So he creates the Reavers, and they go into the Morlock tunnels, and they just
Decimate.
murder a bunch of mutants. And it was of course the first major X-Men event that that took over like the line and other Marvel titles is Mutant Massacre.
Because at that point, Claremont so X Factor, New Mutants, and all those became a thing as well.
Yeah, so because
talking about the spinning out.
X-Men had spun off. They were going to do it was so popular they were going to we're doing another mutant book no matter what.
Yep.
And we want to do Young Mutants. So and Chris Claremont was against it, but he's like, if I can write it, fine.
Yes,
so
if I can write it.
New Mutants in 1982.
Yep. And X Factor.
And X Factor later.
Yep.
A couple years later.
That was a weak book.
It was a weak book. It always was. I would argue it was weak until
Apocalypse.
yeah, I was gonna say
the only good reason.
I would say the mid '90s when Peter David took it over.
And ironically, it featured the characters that I started
featured
with.
the
that I
original-
liked so
it
much.
featured the
Somehow they didn't translate.
Original five. So they had not brought Jean. They had to bring Jean back for that, and that's where we get the whole Phoenix, the rest of the Phoenix saga.
Fantastic Four is actually where they found
Yeah,
her.
yeah, we're in the egg at the bottom of the sea. But originally she was not supposed to be brought back. You know who was supposed to take her place as the woman in the group?
I can't remember.
It was supposed to be Dazzler.
Really?
Yes. They're like, well, Jean's dead, so Dazzler's new. We'll have her round out the team. So
that must kill you.
it does. I know.
'Cause you're a fan of
that's
Dazzler.
their loss. That's
But if that happened, would you still be this big of a Dazzler fan, or would you
yeah.
be would it be the other way around now?
she would have just been Dazzler in a
Jean Grey guy, yeah.
no.
Be
I
like, oh, forget Dazzler. I really want to do a Steve.
I love her for who she Dazzler's just awesome.
How does that fill that
Dazzler
gap of the
fought-
power set?
Dazzler fought Doctor Doom in roller skates. You don't get it much more gangster than that. That's 94 Death Row gangster.
Dr. Doom in roller
Yeah.
skates. Is that in that Dazzler mini?
Yeah.
Oh my. That's awesome.
And then, well, I think we're gonna have to gloss over. I mean, it was just nothing but just great stories.
We were just trying to emphasize that it went from nothing to being the biggest thing. And you guys all recognize now, if you go to the shelf, how there's 15 books. This is the time period where that started.
Yeah.
Where the New Mutants spun out and all the other
and they
stuff.
started going across the line, like so New Mutants, X Factor, X-Men, and then Power Pack and Fantastic Four would generally be affected by whatever.
But I was sad because when we established the discussion, we weren't going to talk, wasn't allowed to talk about
top five
magic.
X-Men, so we have to exclude X-Force, New Mutants, X Factor, Excalibur.
One thing about this great book, and especially around that time, is you had, like you said, Louise Simonson, Ann Nocenti, and Chris Claremont, three of Marvel's most brilliant people.
Yeah.
Figuring out what the next step was, and that's why we got those great stories.
Working just on these books too. Like I've seen pictures of them. They're just all in the same office, the same couch, just hanging out, coming up with these ideas.
Then Ann went to Daredevil and really added a lot to Daredevil.
And I loved her. I love her Daredevil.
Mad Harriet or whatever her name
Yeah.
is.
Not Crazy Mary. Whatever.
Yeah.
But then
Sorry, I can't remember.
But then they do not my favorite X-Men event, but the Outback years where what's it? It's not Fall of the Mutants, where they have to save humanity, and then at the end they all fake their deaths, or they really die. They all touch the Siege Perilous, and that's brought by the Enchantress, but not Enchantress. She's a female.
Right.
I can't think of her name right now. But then and so everybody thinks after they save the world, everybody thinks they're dead, and really they're off in Australia just doing their thing. And it was so weird.
Hugh Jackman.
Like it was so bizarre because like the comics were just them being. There was no like real team. Just the X-Men that we knew were just in Australia, and that's when Dazzler got her great redesign. And that's when her and Longshot were an Ann Nocenti, Arthur Adams invention.
Art Adams, wow.
Yeah, the Mojo verse, which is a very Ann Nocenti thing, just a very
Arthur.
And didn't Louise Simonson take a left turn here? Didn't
Power
Louise?
Pack.
Yeah, create Power
she
Pack.
did- she
She
did,
wanted young characters, right?
and she
ended up
wrote
coming
it.
up with
That was all her.
brilliant
Yeah,
idea.
Yeah, which eventually Franklin Richards got to at least have some friends his age with the Power Pack. Yeah. But I love the Outback years. I remember that's where Jubilee was introduced because she was hiding in their like compound in there, and that's where we get Gateway, the great. He's the guy that just he never speaks. He's an Aborigine in Australia, and he swings his thing, and that's how he can transport anybody anywhere in the world. His name's Gateway. He was like an unofficial part of the team. So whenever they wanted to go somewhere, like there's the infamous like Girls' Day where they go to the mall, and where the guys go to the bar and like, hey, Gateway, can you throw us here? Yeah,
That's
They were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And for Fort Wayne people, that Gateway was one of our shopping centers. So when they wanted to go to the mall, naturally they were thinking of Gateway.
Tying it all together, of course.
Gateway Theater.
Claremont knows no bounds.
There you go.
But
This guy did a lot of research.
It's all building up to my favorite. So I don't know, and because I don't know at the time, I don't know how people view this because it was a little silly. But things in New York started, like mailboxes started coming alive, phone booths started coming alive, and like what's going on in the world. And it was of course Maddie Pryor, Scott Summers married Madeline Pryor, who was not a mutant that we thought, and then Jean Grey turned out to be alive. He left his wife and child.
In X Factor, that was horrible.
Yes, to be with Jean. Maddie, is a now a woman scorned. She makes a deal with Mephisto, and is now comes back as a demonic empress, and she wants revenge on everybody.
That was them trying to fix the fact that Scott had acted badly. He
was a It made him a real heel there.
I had always
Scott-
been a Cyclops fan until that point. That really turned.
It was
me
out of
around.
character, even. Like that's not something he would even if he wasn't happy, he would stay because that was the right
I
thing.
hope
to do.
that wasn't a Bob Layton written issue because I love Bob, but something was wrong there.
Man, I think wasn't Mark Silvestri doing the art at that time? The art was a real standout during. This is the Inferno. This is the Inferno.
I think that
Event.
Scott was just,
Bruce
I mean,
Geis might have been doing it, I think.
to be honest, I guess that's the only time that Scott actually made a decision and did what he wanted instead of having things just terrible things happening to him, just roll over him.
Ugh.
It's like to put a positive spin on it. I guess he made a choice at least.
It sucks to be Scott Summers.
Well, on the battlefield, he was always making good choices.
Oh, he was a great leader.
he can
Great-
be
But in his own personal life, he
great
wasn't so good.
leader in the field.
What was it?
We say like Peter Parker, his life is a walk in the park compared to Scott Summers.
It's
He does have a defeatist attitude about his ailment, his handicap.
which is always I always wondered why he was such a baby.
I know, because
Those red glasses were badass. I thought he looked
they
like such
were.
a badass.
They were.
if someone irritated me and I could just light them on fire with my eyeballs,
Yeah,
I mean,
And later, though, they changed that to only force.
I know, you know what I mean, though.
he has a 6-pack and no job. He should be happy.
He lives in a mansion.
But but this is taking us up. So I think the last big, and I think the last big event was Executioner Song.
Yep.
Which it's
For Claremont.
it's it's pretty bizarre, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you ever want to see a guy strung up over machinery like meat, that is also orchestrating, a nefarious plot to take down the X-Men. And this is just a regular. It's not even like that's not in the top 50 weirdest things in the X-Men.
No, it's always been weird. So that's right around the time. Those are my childhood. Like those are my kid books. Like I was buying those as they were new issues off the shelf.
And that's when it was about to just blow up worldwide because they were moving these new kids, this Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee who were doing great art. And Jim Lee got on the book, and he wanted, because Chris Claremont wanted to let go of the old characters. He didn't want to keep doing the same things. He didn't want Magneto being the bad guy. He didn't want.
Because I want to tell a story about that too.
And Jim Lee did want that. All these kids grew up with that, so that's what we want. And Jim Lee's books were selling, and Claremont was kind of pushed out. So they dropped Uncanny, and he went to just X-Men, and he wrote the first 3 issues.
Yep.
And Jim Lee did the art. And if you read, they're bad. Those issues are unreadable, but they're awesome. We all had them. But if you read them now, they don't make any sense. But also, if you thought Chris Claremont was wordy for the first 15 years, this was him.
cow.
He knew he was being pushed out, and it's like he was trying to do his.
He's trying to throw every word in the dictionary.
Yeah, like no. See how you need me, and
He's like, I'm going to get an entire arc in this book.
and he was rather unceremoniously, and he left. He got to do a quick ending of his story, but that's really where it ended for him in 91 or 92.
Yes.
Yeah,
But so in Uncanny, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back and tell the story.
Yeah.
I have an Uncanny story, which it's related to a few things we've already talked about. It relates to So the Christmas that I was getting really, really into it. Like this is the year where like comics were going to be part of my life, and it was just established and known. And my parents, they knew that, and like many wives or girlfriends or boyfriends, whatever else that come in here trying to shop for somebody, you don't know what books you got or they have and everything like that. So it's like a gift card situation, or you find out exactly which book it is. You know, those books, they've picked those books, and it's not a surprise at Christmas, but at least you got what you want type of situation, which is like that in this type of hobby. Well, my folks were basically doing the same thing for me as a kid. I mean, I couldn't afford to buy them myself, so I don't know what the point was, but they basically gave me a choice. The shop that I was going to had a Hulk 181, which was $200.
A second appearance of Wolverine.
A second appearance of Wolverine. Yep. Or I could get, I could spend it how I wanted to. And I'm like, well, shit, I'll get $10, $20 books. Why wouldn't I do that?
Sure.
So that's what I opted for instead of a second appearance of Wolverine, Hulk 181, which is now an $11,000 book. That was $200 at the time. And I got, but as one of those, I was buying the Jim Lee cover Uncanny X-Men books that were coming out at the time. Because Jim Lee, so 268 was one of them for sure. It was that super awesome Captain America, Wolverine,
Black Widow
cover. Yeah. And that's the issue where Wolverine and Steve recognize that they know each other from back in the day. Like two old men talking about how like, holy shit, you were, yeah, okay, cool, man. So I thought that was kind of cool. So that was a $20 book then. Would you guys like to guess at how much that book's worth now?
23?
19.
It's about $15 to $20.
Wow.
Hey, man, that's good. It's holding value.
Still a great cover.
Yeah. Along with so that's just it.
That's something
my
that
memory
confuses me.
Well, it's talking about
It's worth way more than that in value as far as the art and story idea.
it's that one is a product of the time. I think there are just so many issues. And the most popular book times the time period where they're making books equals the fact that it's worth anything at all is pretty cool. Because 90s, which were just talked about, X-Men #1 is the #1 most printed book ever. 12 million copies or something. Yeah. 12 million.
So Marvel 2 weeks ago decided to reprint the gatefold edition of that.
The facsimile, yeah.
A book that had millions and millions of copies. They decided, you know what? It's worth about $10. Let's make a reprint of that.
So
Facsimile.
now we have a facsimile that's probably worth more from a scarcity standpoint.
Way rarer than the actual
book.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Thanks, Marvel.
Just a weird timeline.
But the paper is killer.
So much better. It's white paper.
Nice paper.
Yes, it's
cool.
near cardstock fold out, so it's pretty.
It's very pretty.
Grab one.
So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead with what you're saying. I have something that's retro. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Well, I had a few stories because it means a lot to me. The whole Jim Lee thing and X-Men are like part of my initial journey. Because the other thing I think I've told before is very first book I ever had signed was my X-Men #1 by Jim Lee.
That's the greatest.
I have that book.
You used to have it, yeah.
Yeah, it's as good a condition as a 11-year-old or 12-year-old can keep something for that long. I'd say it's probably still like a 9.6 or so, but with the signature. I mean, it's
amazing.
It's a $1 book with a $400 signature on it, right? So, but
Yeah, great.
And still
it's incredible because he's
arguably the thing he's best known for.
Yes,
That Wildcats
beautiful
and
art,
Rush.
but I've also, it's weird. I've grown up, and it sounds weird. I've watched him grow into his career. Like he started off at that time, he was like, put it in perspective. I was just some kid that could walk up to him and he was signing the book. Now
I was the head of DC.
he's the head of DC. So it's like,
Props to Jim Lee.
yeah, absolutely.
He should thank you for.
He spun that.
I'm pretty sure that I started all of that.
That turned his life around, and him signing your book at that turned his life around.
Well,
Look what he's
your
doing
young
now.
eyes.
Well, you tell me, which direction has his career gone since then?
Up.
Right?
Didn't go. Yep.
Up and down and up and down and up and down.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
So, no, I mean, if we're moving up to that X-Men 1 book, I have to tell that story. I love that book.
I just remember being obsessed with anything X related at the time because of the cartoon and the comics. And you and me talked about this. We were just drawn to the Excalibur books.
Yeah.
Which are the worst things to be drawn to at that age because if you're not following those from the beginning, you think X-Men was a mess. Excalibur.
I liked it 'cause-
bonkers.
yeah.
I still love Excalibur, but boy, that is That is Claremont definitely letting his freak flag fly, and also like because he was half British, and he had dual citizenship, he knew from which he spake.
But then also, I had to because that's where Nightcrawler moved over to.
Yeah, because that was so during the Outback years, once they went the Siege Perilous, blah blah blah. The Kitty and Nightcrawler didn't go through. They thought they were dead.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what are we gonna do now? Well, we have each other. Let's move to a lighthouse with Captain Britain and Megan and Rachel Summers. Yeah.
Yep. So that was the entire reason why I ended up over at Excalibur was that's where Nightcrawler and Kitty went.
Yeah.
So, and then you had like, I told you before C2E2 that Arthur Adams, I forget the name of it even. It's not Mojo Madness, whatever. It's the story where all the X-Men, like Longshot and everybody's there.
They're kids.
They'll get shrunk into kids, but Kitty's still older. So it's kind of like
And she has to like shepherd them.
yes,
During
through the Mojo verse. But it's like, you remember the movie Adventures in Babysitting?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Elizabeth Shue.
It was kind of like
First
that.
appearance of Thor,
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember who played Thor though?
played by Kingpin, the great
yeah, I was
Vincent
gonna say.
D'Onofrio,
Yes.
That is such a
Finally
cool
somebody
thing.
else realized that.
who we all think of when we think of a male
Thor,
god.
yeah.
Think of,
That's awesome. But she was kind of like shepherding them through that and stuff. It was cool seeing them as like little kids. I mean, that's obviously a story trope that's been happened. It's happened multiple times. But
It was just goofy, fun.
very, very fun. That was one of the very first like $5 like trade books that I had picked up as a kid. And the Arthur Adams art is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
He's brilliant. Yeah.
he can't because he was the initial the initial artist on Excalibur. Then he left for a while and came back to write and draw. Long shot. Oh, and the Mojo verse. Mojo always, especially, he was a producer in his own. He was a TV producer in his own universe, and everything was about ratings. Everything was a reality show. He controlled the universe by controlling reality TV.
Which you've all seen. It's been Doctor Who episodes, types of
All
things.
anyone
Or
watched.
But he
Yeah.
also was driven insane by the TV signals from 616.
Yeah, he was absolutely he absolutely towed the line between silly and
horror.
terrifying.
I
He
have
was
a weird.
Jabba the Hutt of the X-Men.
He was carried around.
He looks very Joker though. He looks
that
like the
thing.
Joker.
I have a weird eye thing, and how his eyes were always pinned
clockwork
open.
style. Yeah.
see more
To keep
TV.
to keep his eyes open.
Yeah, you mix Joker and Ursula
Yeah.
together, and you've got Mojo.
I always thought he had like
Long, thin,
disgustingly thin arms.
fingernails. Yeah, and those long nails.
Gross.
He had a very huge.
He was
belly
very.
in the beginning. I don't know if he
Oh
kept-
no, he was always big. Couldn't move on his own. So
Yeah.
and that was an innocent.
and a kind of a yellow cast to
Yeah.
it.
He was not healthy. He was not a healthy guy. But yeah, I mean, and then we're not going to go through the whole thing.
No, we're just glossing over it. There are people that have entire podcasts about X-Men. There are years.
much
better. We are just
dedicated ones.
Yeah, this isn't. We're just trying to give some love on it and talk about.
I'll tell you, because from my perspective, then, because Fabian Nicieza took over, I stuck with it until Age of Apocalypse, which was very good. The quality immediately did drop. Fabian Nicieza is not the writer that Chris Claremont is, but Age of Apocalypse.
He's a good writer, though.
Yes. But an Age of Apocalypse was great. It was a Days of Future Past type, where Apocalypse wins, and the few remaining mutants have to find a way to reverse that. And that was a great event. But then I don't know, they kind of went to the wilderness for a few years, and it just wasn't a good comic anymore. And by 2000, it was lame. And then Grant Morrison wrote this great memo to the editor in chief at Marvel and said, "This is how to make X-Men relevant and how to make them cool." And then we get the great new X-Men by Grant Morrison, which lasted a few years. Redesign, it was a great success.
That was what? Is that 2004?
No, it was earlier. It was like 2000, 2001.
Is that when it ran till though? That's what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, till because
till
then,
about
because then
2004.
you got to Astonishing
Yes,
with Joss Whedon, which was just like a great
and Cassidy art.
and
That was a great combination.
And that's one of the best runs on X-Men ever. Both of those, like that's that 1-2 punch. And then for me personally, I went. It was the Wilderness again for another. Like after the Messiah Complex came next, and then
Because that's where I was at. So I guess to throw out a few, we can wrap this up. Like talk about some of the highlight events that we've read. I mean, I guess just for suggestions for people.
Oh, yeah.
and then we can just kind of round things out. Like you want to do like a top 5.
we'll round it out.
favorite.
We'll end it with the Krakoa era that we know of, and
Yes,
then
we
we'll
can
go
do
to
that too.
who we think the best X-Men are.
So, you had mentioned it before, but God Loves, Man Kills, fantastic. I personally, I don't know if this is a polarizing thing or not, but I loved House of M.
I love House of M.
what else? And it's probably just at the time, Extinction Agenda
Yeah.
was nice. That was, you already mentioned Messiah Complex. What was the one?
Fall of the Mutants and Inferno are my favorites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of
that time.
That time, yes.
Fatal Attraction, Unstoppable.
Fatal Attraction, yeah.
Inferno, Mutant Genesis.
What was the Wolverine getting Magneto ripping the claws out?
That was after Age of Apocalypse, right?
Right, but what was the name of it? I'm trying to remember that one.
Can't think of it.
Was that the Fatal Attraction? No, I mean
I remember the panel though. Mm-hmm. Brutal. Yeah.
it was bad.
Yeah.
But I liked it up to that point, but that coincided with
No pun intended.
that coincided with Silvestri was leaving at that point, and that's when the Image game started ramping up. And then after he ripped his claws out, I hate to say it, but I was like, not interested. I mean, at that point,
it was a regression.
Yeah.
When did they take it from him?
75. Wolverine 75.
Okay.
Because remember, it coincided with X-Men 25 with the hologram, X-Men 75 with the hologram. Like the 4 books had the different hologram covers, and I remember
He didn't get his Animanium back until 1999.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah.
He kept breaking bone claws and riding motorcycles. I don't know what the hell else he was doing.
It's probably easier to move though.
Probably.
When
instead of it being all
there's not
yeah.
Man,
I don't know what the mass.
it's got to be awful. Just see it fastened to your bone.
So I think that's an admission at that part. We read the classic stories and we did some of that. We read the ones that we grew up with, but there is that blackout period that we kind of have
for
missing.
me, it was mostly between, and I don't know if this is widespread, between like 2008 and 2018. I was kind of like, nah, I'm good.
But also, I'm going to take this as an opportunity because I'm in the same boat there as far as X-Men, and I think you are too, Matt and Rick. For those of you that listen, put a comment out somewhere. If you know storylines that we should be covering between that 2008 and 2000, what did you say? 2018 probably, period. Let us know, and we'll read them, and we can talk
outside
about
of Avengers versus X-Men, I read that.
Right,
you know.
right.
But then in 2019, resident genius of Marvel and lifetime listeners of the podcast will know that my fourth favorite living comics writer, Jonathan Hickman, decided his new project was going to be to revamp
the X-Men.
The entire line. He had a plan, and Marvel let him do it. And that's where we got House of X, Powers of 10.
So now, that's the starting point if you want to read any of the X-Men books currently running. So, Marauders.
And he was the creative chief of the entire X-Men line for what, two years? Yeah, before he left. And then, again, now I'm back where I was,
Was it X-Men Unlimited? Was that the single issue of Wolverine?
That was the one we talked about a long time ago.
That is the best single issue I've read in a long time.
Yeah.
But it was also the best X-Men comic.
So, it started with House of X, Powers of X, as far as kicking off the new X-Men
with the House of
self-contained.
M.
No. The House of M was the
2005.
House. That's Sword of X.
Oh, okay.
Yes, X of Swords.
X of Swords. Sorry, I always mix up the.
Which was a line-wide event because now there was a new Mutant title, a new X Factor title,
Right.
a new Marauders title.
Where Kitty Pryde is a
pirate.
which is awesome.
Perfect. And a new Exterminators.
Yep.
And all of these were being overseen by Hickman, and they all tied together. Like each one was essential to the other story. It was hard to keep up with, but it was also kind of a blast to keep up with.
Very rewarding. So, what I do know is you could read all the old X-Men rules applied as far as like get in on an arc, work your way back if you can. This Hickman stuff, House of X, Powers of X, is necessary for picking up an X-Men book now. Like,
But it will catch you up. It will catch you up on 30 years of history if you don't want to read all that.
Right.
But I will say for my part, like after Hickman quit, driving the train, I got off at the next station. I'm about 2 years out too.
He has a very unique way of doing it though. But yes, so the X-Men Unlimited. Right? I have a question. Is it called Unlimited because of all of the revival stuff, as far as being able to die and being able to be brought back?
Which was a great idea.
Right. Is that the play on that? And is that why... See, it makes a lot more sense because that issue came out before I actually read that stuff, Matt. So I didn't know about the whole revival thing. And I was like, how is Wolverine taking all this punishment?
Yeah, Hickman finds a way to take away X-Men's ability to die, essentially. So, but he did that for a creative reason. Like, you can't lean on that crutch anymore as a writer, and none of his writers could. You can't lean on that crutch. You have to
Yeah, it's actually called Latitude. It's X-Men Unlimited. Latitude #1 is the actual name of it.
And it was crazy because remember we got it, and it was like the first Wolverine story we had read in like 5 years where Wolverine was actually Wolverine.
Yes,
he busted into a spot, kicked some ass.
He just murders. He didn't talk. He just murders everywhere, and then MODOK shows up in it. It was hilarious because he's
It was pretty. There was very little dialogue. It was pretty much like the It's Jeff book,
Yeah.
but it was all just Wolverine killing people.
But it was the storyline. It was great.
It's cool.
I love the Jason Aaron the Wolverine and X-Men
Yes.
where he takes over and he's a teacher and everything. That's fine, but I do want my Wolverine as a like kind of
Has
berserker murderer.
at least the ability to berserker.
Yeah.
X-Men 2 killing kids killing soldiers in the school.
Yeah.
Yes, that Wolverine.
Was the comment about Unlimited and the reason for that title, was that creative thought?
That was a question that I had
For me,
because I don't know.
From the old days, Marvel owns that brand of Unlimited. They've been using Unlimited to all their titles for many years.
All those crazy chromium ones are all unlimited.
It might be that.
And Hickman is a aficionado of
Well, that's evident if you read anything on the new Powers of X
Just
stuff.
from a business standpoint, they might have wanted to keep that title.
No, it very well could be, but
Well, it's
I just
cool
thought
that
it
they
was
put it
cool
with that
that
story.
it was a nice time because just as he did with Avengers when he made his own Secret Wars, owned it, he made his own Inferno.
Yep.
In his run, and that's how he ended his run with a 4-part Inferno series, and it was just incredible.
It's Hickman doing. It's Hickman doing the X-Men. I mean, it's exactly what you would want out of
As
it.
it gets. So
Can I
yeah,
since I've already brought everything to a screeching halt, can I bring one other thing in here?
No, you're good.
Talking with the original X-Men, I don't know if everyone who's reading X-Men today that would be fans and listening to the podcast are aware of all these changes. But when you think about the original team, you've got Angel,
Yep.
who was an original Marvel character from the earliest years,
Yep.
probably within maybe first or second issue that Marvel ever published. There was a character called the Angel, so they wanted,
like Timely Days.
they wanted to hang on to the title of the Angel because it had been, Namor and Human
Which I
Torch,
forgot to bring it up, but
Kazar and
his
Angel.
redesign in Archangel is one of my favorite all-time designs. That I've just throwing that out there.
In X Factor.
That's what I was getting
yes.
to is that
Sorry.
I have to think about from the old days. Angel is now Archangel, but they wanted
Yes.
to keep that title. You've got Jean Grey, who became the Dark Phoenix or the Phoenix. You've got
Marvel Girl originally.
Marvel Girl originally. You have Magneto, who I know this is a sensitive subject, so you guys probably want to expound on this, but I mean, he was a total evil villain.
Pure evil.
In the
No
first
dimensions.
early issues. Yeah, he was one personality, one note. And of course, he has a backstory now that makes him much more sympathetic, and he's done good.
Yes.
So you may want to talk about it. And the other thing is, when I was talking with
And if you do like those stories about Magneto, I really, really like the Hickman stuff because Magneto is exactly he's exactly where he needs to be. He's like a representative of
Well, he's always the one that
mutants.
He's always the one that gets stuff done and doesn't. Isn't that where is that where you're going? Like they
Yes, but-
use him because he actually gets stuff done.
But also with the new stuff, mutants actually gain some leverage as far as like, fine, well, we've got all this stuff going for us. And then Magneto's in that same spot where he's at, but he's able to tell people to fuck off. And it was nice. Like, because at the beginning, when they have the meeting, they find out about all the medication and all the stuff. And Magneto's like, and I don't know.
I just thought it was.
If you like the whole Magneto,
Yes.
both sides thing, it's him being very reasonable, but with some cards to play. And I love, at least in the
Hell, by the mid '80s, he was the head of the Xavier.
No, he was.
Yeah.
But that's
Downright
way
cuddly.
yes.
But no, I agree how he is. And
He's not cuddly though in the new book.
No,
he's
but he's still absolutely the character.
he's a good mix. Yeah. Sorry.
the other three things are we get to see in those early issues that are not as popular, but are, this origin is how Professor X got to be crippled and how he's in a wheelchair. Because at one point he was an Indiana Jones kind of
Right.
professor. And that's interesting,
belongs in a museum.
in Egypt, right?
Yeah, and he's hurt in an accident there, and then also strongly hinted but not suggested until way later, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver being Magneto's children.
Yes. Yep.
Was always alluded to, but not
The
really
Maximoff
said until
children.
later.
And
in
mutants
the
themselves.
Avengers, they finally did say yes, they're his children, and now I guess the whole storyline has changed, and they're not his children
retconned
anymore.
out.
Well, the X-Men movies kept that alive though. So they're I mean they don't say it, but they dance around it a lot. So the movies kept that.
Okay. Well, I just thought it'd be
Quicksilver,
something interesting
yeah.
for people who are listening that maybe don't know all that history. There was quite a bit revealed in those early days that we kind of glossed over.
For the longest time, the Angel to Archangel arc was my favorite thing the X-Men had ever done.
Yep.
And that was Walt and Louis Simonson in the pages of X Factor of all things. But
Yep.
It should have its ups and downs, I guess. And maybe that was a plus.
that was a plus.
It was so weird because when you'd mentioned like all the vanity and all the other stuff associated to turn him into like this.
Warren is vain. He knows how good looking he is.
Yes. And he was just the Archangel. It was so like weird halfway. It looked kind of robotic in a way.
But it was that beautiful,
dangerous, where the angel used to be such a pretty boy.
Yeah.
Now Archangel was like
razor sharp
menacing.
wings. It was a perfect Walt redesign. Perfect Walt. Everything about it to his metal wings, and
His face was like blue.
He turned. It was Apocalypse wanted him as as his agent,
Horseman.
one of his horsemen, and he turned him against the X-Men, and it was awesome. And ultimately he came back, but he remained the Archangel for several years.
Yep. It was cool stuff.
That betrayal was kind of a major point that kept you interested in the story. I think you were worried about what was going to happen.
They always
him.
brought it back. That was I don't remember. Issue 27, I think, is when he becomes Archangel. So,
X Factor 27.
yeah.
Yeah.
Find the X Factor issues, guys. They're not hard to find. Nobody-
Apocalypse is what?
We got a bunch in the dollar bin.
6.
Yeah, no.
Which is his first appearance? Do you remember?
I
6,
he
8?
appeared in a cameo on the last page of last panel of one of those.
Yeah.
And then the next one it was him.
So yeah, I mean, so if you guys like Apocalypse, X Factor is where that stuff started. So
But be careful the first year or so.
But actually, if we could do the top 5, this is a good segue into
That's
it. If
completely
you wanna
fine.
Start it because I usually keep my 5th spot reserved for that always kind of rotates out. My 1 through 4 of my favorite X-Men has not changed in years, but 5th it's always like, well, this week I like Gambit, this week I like Storm, but usually it is Warren Worthington in the guise of the Angel, the first one, just because there's so much there. One, I like almost all of his redesigns of his outfit. But
shirtless was just the X was kind of cool.
I did not like that.
That was Hawkman, if you think about it.
I
And
know.
it was,
that's
yeah. There's one where he's got it's like a full body burgundy with a white in the middle with a little halo. But I was like he was vain, but he was a good person. But I don't think what I don't think is really conveyed enough is how physically imposing Angel's supposed to be. People are like, what can you do? You can just fly around. Like, no, he is a brute force. He is a huge, broad-shouldered, and when he hits you, like, he can knock a hole through you. I don't think it's ever conveyed properly, at least the way I think of Angel. And I love that about him. Also, like, he is wealthy and he is spoiled, but it doesn't really, like, the way, like, Roberto da Costa,
yeah, but so is Oliver Queen. So it shows you can be.
Some of them, it makes them,
The musculature of moving those wings at high speed. And
there's a fun little tidbit that I remember when I was a kid, but they said, well, one of the things that he does is when he folds up his wings, it makes his and puts on a shirt or a jacket, it makes his shoulders look even broader, so girls find him even more attractive. And that's canon. And I always thought that was very cool. But yeah, between that and then like losing it as Archangel and having to come back and find like something about himself that he liked besides his looks was awesome. So yeah, Angel would definitely be my 5th favorite. 70% of the time.
Because it actually made me think about, just because Angel, going back to that very, very first issue, because he's present in that, and he's one of the original X-Men.
Yeah.
I'd thought about how cool it would be. At one point, I really wish they would have gotten like Jim Lee to redraw number 1.
As an exercise?
As an exercise.
How they all look.
Because I would love to see him like draw Angel in that way, or Iceman.
Absolutely.
Like back there in the day. Then also because that thought actually originated as whenever I pick up like a Clayman book, because I feel like he's Jim Lee like on steroids. Like when you had mentioned like, oh, he's devilishly handsome and whatever else. Like I'm like, I want to see Clayman draw Angel, like the different redesigns.
Draw the great, yeah.
Because I mean, part of it, like if you're giving him,
if the girls got Power Girl this week, we can have Angels in the future, huh?
well, no, I mean, if half of his power is the fact that he's good looking, the artist should be doing that
Yes.
justice all the time.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I think in the old days, though, they were Stan was trying to write the Cyclops gene as the main story, so they couldn't make Angel look too good because then he would be the obvious win.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, that's the thing. Scott is at least he's a handsome guy. At least he's got.
Oh,
that
he
going
is.
for him.
Ladies love Warren, yeah.
Everything else about his life is pretty bad.
And casting wise, I think casting in X-Men movies have been
The great James Marsden, and then the Taylor Sheridan, who I really wanted to be a star, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Early days yet. But yeah, and Angel's also the only of the original 5 that makes my top 5. So
that's cool.
yeah.
I'm kind of a fan of the Beast. I like
love
that
Beast.
dialogue, the vocabulary. When I was a child, that was helpful, actually to see
It's such an interesting power.
larger words, being used. And also, the odd thing was that he also went through a transformation. He was
Yeah,
kind of
unrelated to
ape-like
his mutant
football
power.
player, and suddenly now he's a blue furry
Yeah.
creature. He did that to himself,
Yeah, a lab accident.
which was cool. And he had his own series for a while. Fought Iron Man and did some other neat things
Yeah,
outside
and
of the X-Men.
the first X-Men on the Avengers, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think on that one though, the redesign with the blue fur was so much better
Yeah.
because before that he just looked like another king. He just looked like Kingpin ish. The way he was like wide and like kind of
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
dimensions wise and size wise, like he was kind of
I took that as because it was a university, that he needed to be, like on an athletic scholarship or whatever, and it would just make it fit in better because they were still trying to hide from the public. But that was just my take on it as a kid.
I guess for whatever reason, when they made him beast looking, I'm like, oh, now he looks like something like a cat or something that's more agile. When he looked like
An
weird, hairy, when he looked more like the ape, it felt more weird. It felt more natural when he got the fur, I guess.
Off on a bit of a tangent, but speaking of cat-like, Grant Morrison introduced in his run in the new X-Men introduced the idea of secondary mutations, which mileage may vary on how you feel about that, but he became much more cat-like as part of his secondary mutation.
But also there was a tragedy there because, like Archangel, he thought he was going to be able to change back, and he found he couldn't, and then he was trapped looking like that. And he had some normal life with his
Which they handled that, I
girlfriend,
think,
Vera,
very well
girlfriend.
in the movies. I mean, the adaptation, like the love interests and stuff were different, but I think they handled his struggle with that in the new X-Men movies, like First Class, and what was the next one after that?
Historically, X-Men have not had the best luck.
No.
So.
No, true.
Does anybody else have a number 5?
I do. I've got a number 5. I've got my number 5 is Psylocke.
Nice.
There's a
Talk about a story. Talk about a long and storied history, though.
my list is 100% of my era. I cannot shake it. I've thought about it. I've tried. I can't help, when we talk about things in the store and stuff so often, I understand and I already know what people are going to say and stuff. So I kind of avoided yours a little bit because
We'll have some crossover.
we'll have some crossover for sure. But Psylocke, I 100% like, first of all, like the psionic, like, the hand blade was like one of the coolest things I'd ever seen because it looked like hurt people, but then also like when it plunged into their head, it wasn't like a violent bloody thing. It was like a scrambling their brain type thing, right?
Yeah.
So it was like it was like a physical
attack,
it was like a psychic attack, which was like that whole concept at the time. Because like I said, I was 10 or 12. I was like, oh, that's cool. It's not like a knife. It like messes up their head. That's awesome. And then I'm not, I was a 10-year-old, 12-year-old boy. She's gorgeous, gorgeous costume, like gorgeous
Jim Lee
abilities.
didn't redesign the costume so much as correct it.
Yeah.
It was
And-
this billowy salmon-colored blouse.
right. And like the whole backstory and the concept of that's Betsy Braddock, that's Captain Britain's sister
Yep.
in just another body.
They're twins.
Yeah. So it's
off of your Excalibur reading, right?
Yes.
yes. So my number 5, Psylocke, it was just true love as far as the actual issues. I was disappointed that she wasn't in the show because it just would have strengthened it even further.
She definitely grew too in the comics because she was a little bit timid in the 80s when she joined. She was quiet and then she came into her own. And by the 90s,
I can tell you
she
the
was a
exact
badass.
page that happened.
Yeah?
It was when she walked out of the pool and then Jean caught
Oh, yeah.
Scott staring in issue number 1.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yes.
You got
Boy, howdy. I became a man that day.
exactly. Yeah, that's my number 5. I've got 5 on Psylocke.
Nice.
We're gonna say that you said 5 for Beast to keep it
good.
rolling.
Good.
I'll say 5. Maggot.
Maggot is
Maggot is awesome.
Maggot has some staunch defenders, and they're not wrong.
He's very strange because he can't eat anything. However, he has 2 things that live inside him that can, and they climb out of him. They go eat, and then they return to him and provide him with substance.
Yeah. He's essentially a gestalt of maggots. It's
Yes.
But that is so much part of the fun of X-Men is like, it could be anything. Your power could be absolutely anything.
We haven't even talked about the ecstatics,
Yes.
like the dupe.
Yeah.
Hey,
There's so
Slimer.
much crazy stuff. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So, well, speaking of fun, then my number 4, and this, I'm surprised she's not higher because I adore this character. I'll buy anything she's in. I'll take all challengers. Is one Miss Allison Blair, disco queen turned pop queen, the Dazzler.
The Dazzler.
She was, of course, introduced. They found her in a disco.
Where else would you find her?
She in a disco
Dancing queen.
doing Dazzler shit. I kind of associate that with her.
Right.
Like, listen to that. She was poised. She was a huge pop star until she was unmasked as a mutant, and such as the view towards mutants that it ruined her career. She ended up having to be a backup singer for Lila Cheney, who is the biggest pop star in the Marvel universe.
She was canceled for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
She's canceled for being a mutant.
Which because the mutants have always been the oppressed. The oppressed. They are the minority. It's a stand-in for any oppressed people, and that's another reason for their enduring
Yes.
popularity. I think because anybody who's feeling, and everybody feels like an outcast at some point, but you can find there's an X-Men for you out there, but nobody again same with Angel. I don't think she gets enough credit for how badass she is. Just so imagine like.
You already told us she fought Dr. Doom in roller skates.
Exactly.
Like,
and
what else?
she converts sound into energy blasts, So imagine like say you're like in a crowded restaurant or you're on a beach and all of a sudden everything gets quiet. Like and your voice quits coming out. Like there's no wind anymore. You can't hear the seagulls. And then you turn and you see this woman and she just lets this ultimate like powerful. She could down a skyscraper. I think like Allison is Dazzler is amazing. She started out being this powerful disco queen, and then she ended up being an ultimate badass. Fun fact though, originally Chris Claremont wanted to base her design on Grace Jones, this tall black woman who was huge at the time, a huge star at the time, and Marvel was not going to go for it.
Is that pre or post Conan?
Post Conan, pre Vamp,
Yeah.
and I think pre A View to a Kill, where she was
Yeah.
So that would have been it would have been a very very cool thing, but it would have been a completely different character. But I like the Dazzler that we got. So
At the time that it came out, I associated it with Xanadu, with Olivia Newton-John and the roller skates. There's the Rita Hayworth movie remake,
and
Down to Earth.
But it's cool because that's the other fun part about X-Men.
Gene Kelly. Yeah.
They come from all walks of life. They're so drastically different, and then they have those things in common. And my number 4, I can kind of bring this in, is Storm, because what I was saying was that there's all these different mutants. They've been multiple teams. They've been concurrent teams, like Blue and Yellow. Like back when I was reading Uncanny and stuff, I think Scott was the leader of Blue and Storm was the leader of Yellow. So they'd have different things going on, and they were, they'd have to separate. But Storm has always been, even before, confirmed Omega level status as far as powers and ability. Like that's never been her strength. Like she's always a leader.
She's an Omega level person.
Like she was always, like whatever was going on in the X-Men books, like Storm was there. Like, and she was like a character that was kind of like helping push things in the right direction.
Like we said, she was depowered, and she's like, "Nah, she's
still an X-Men."
And nobody
questioned it. Yeah,
I'm not telling her anything.
But then when she does let her rip, as far as power, I mean, it goes above and
stay out of the way.
Yeah, well, she's honest to goodness controlling the weather to extreme points. Like we currently have just driving along sometimes circumstances where it's raining so hard you have to pull over and put your blinkers on just to move around. Now that however many times forceful as you want on command. I mean, some of these powers are very well thought out and like,
and we don't have to do this for everyone. So like, I like Army Hammer 10 years ago would be a good Angel, and I think Taylor Swift would be a perfect Dazzler. Who do you think would be a perfect Storm on film?
good Lord.
You can pick.
So, 'cause I have run into the same problem. If we talking like years ago, years and years ago, I would love to have seen Angela Bassett.
Absolutely, yeah,
100% as far as having those qualities. But then I kind of got that in Wakanda.
Sure.
She was queen of Wakanda. I mean, she was queen where she kind of did play her a little bit. But that's probably, I don't know which came first. I don't know if I had that thought or seeing her in that role
right.
caused that. But I'm fine. I think Halle Berry's fantastic. I mean,
I wouldn't mind seeing Beyonce in the role. I think Halle Berry did very, very well.
I think she did great.
Alexander Shipp did fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone, yeah.
But I guess
That's tough for a character that strong.
Rosario Dawson, I guess maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, I think
is that for a character that
she needs to have some. I mean, she has to have presence, and like there has to be like a ooh.
like when she naturally walks in a room, everybody's like, "Oh, who is she?" Like, what?
Absolutely. And then for
Yes,
people
ma'am.
that don't know, she is Queen of Wakanda, and I guess what I was making reference to is because her and Black Panther are married.
They were.
They were in
Yeah.
the books. So it's not a stretch to say,
Right.
to see that.
She's a match for T'Challa.
Yes.
which we talked about on this. T'Challa is the man.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep. So I'm sorry. Number 4 is Storm.
great.
Great leader, great mutant, great powers.
I think my number 4 is Toad. It's always been Mortimer. I love him.
The tongue is your.
Yeah. And they made him the janitor when he joined. So,
And portrayed by the great Ray Park.
yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that even.
Fresh off of Sleepy Hollow and Darth Maul.
Yep. He,
Oh man, talk about it.
You know,
That'd be awesome at parties. What do you do? Darth Maul, Toad.
the Headless Horseman.
So I'm going to argue the line. You know what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? Same thing happens to everyone else. That's not a bad line.
No.
It's just delivered maybe poorly. I've never had a problem with the line. Like, yeah.
But admittedly, good Lord, talk about one of those abilities where you are kind of tortured. Like,
That's awful specific.
it's very specific, and it's like, what can you do with it? Really,
That's another thing though about the minority thing, where it's like some mutants wear their mutation like out and proud, and then a lot of them feel that they have to hide it. They have to hide it from their parents. They don't want to tell their parents they're a mutant. They don't want to like let society know that they have a mutation, even if it's something that that's normal. Like I can grow my fingernails quickly, but they don't want people to know that
on command.
because such as the
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to do this to me now. Good for his name. Yes.
I don't know.
I don't know. I lost that.
Don't worry. Let's not get caught up in it.
Nope.
Guys, this isn't the time. It's
Roll
fine.
on.
We know who you're talking about.
Rick. Do you have a 4?
I was going to maybe pick something that's old-fashioned and not as popular these days, but Cyclops or Scott was a really important character in the beginning to me as a kid. I thought it was cool that this really powerful guy who had invented, all this equipment that they used to find mutants and who had rounded all these kids up and decided to give them a second chance. He chose, of all the students that he could have picked, he chose Scott. And if you go back and read the old stories, he chose him first.
Yes.
Before anyone else, and trained him to be a leader on the battlefield with the X-Men because they knew they were going to be running into the evil mutants. And so if Professor X trusted Cyclops more than anybody else to be the leader, to make the right decisions, then that kind of made him kind of Superman-ish to me
Yes.
as far as being like the best.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he had this power that, like Matt mentioned earlier, at the beginning they hadn't defined it very well, and at first it had heat associated with it.
Concussive.
Yeah.
And then later became concussive only. But I mean, they showed it sometimes. Jack Kirby would portray it in a way that was so impressive, like the idea that you could knock down things with just concentrating and using this beam emitted from your eye. It was exciting to see such power.
Well, and the purpose, they went into it a lot better in those earlier issues, even than they did later. Like when I picked it up, they didn't ever talk about the fact that he had a dial on there where you could pinpoint it, and you were like basically like a pressure washer, deciding like you're going to take this concussive blast, and if you fine tune it enough, you could punch holes through things as compared to
Right, his visor was very
right.
important. Yeah.
So
The ruby quartz lens was interesting
ruby
to
quartz.
me.
ruby quartz, very
Why
specific.
Would that be the thing that hold it?
Well, because it's got to be red, because that's what that makes for cool sunglasses. That's why.
And then he was quiet and smart and shy and unsure of himself because of his handicap. He thought it was a handicap, anyways. I don't know. There's something
He
about
wanted
that was,
so much to do the right thing.
Yeah.
He wanted so much to like
That's
not
endearing.
mess up.
So of course he doesn't get the girl.
He didn't want to disappoint.
At least at first he doesn't.
he didn't want to disappoint the professor or anybody else.
That was pity.
Like he like punished himself. I thought,
Right.
yeah.
And as a young kid who's troubled and thinking about your own feelings, you read about another guy.
He's
who's
had a
going through
rough
some
go
things.
of
It's
it.
Interesting, yeah.
I've had a weird relationship with Scott over the. I mean, I've thought he's done a good job, but I don't think I'm likable. Like he felt kind of vanilla compared to all the other personalities.
And it felt like the only reason he's in charge was because he needed something to distract him from the fact that his love life wasn't going as planned, and he was jealous all the time. It felt like they gave him
movies did that.
responsibilities to, yes, that too.
And in the, especially the films, they wanted to make Wolverine because Hugh Jackman was such a great performer. They gave him so much sway over Scott. It made Scott look kind of wimpy, which I didn't like. Because in the beginning,
It's not as cool when
was the
Wolverine's
leader.
looking you eye to eye. Like that's a lot cooler dynamic in the comics where it's like,
Yeah, you have to.
And there was no Jean Grey Wolverine thing when I was
No.
first reading
Yeah.
comics.
Yeah.
That's all something they added in later that, I have mixed feelings about. I love Wolverine and I love Cyclops, and I just don't like to see them fighting,
yeah.
over a girl.
Wolverine's so oversaturated. My number 3 is Wolverine. But for that reason, for so many years I was over it, and then going back and doing the great reread of the Claremont, the 16 years, you totally get it. You get why this guy is a great character. Okay, so I'm gonna.
He's just an animal restrained. That's all he is. Barely restrained.
at the beginning.
He thinks that of himself, and then he comes to realize that he was a person at some point, and I think it's the X-Men. It's Charles that sees it first, and he has to convince him, like, no, there's something more to you than just being this.
Well, and
he's resistant. He doesn't want to go.
He's my number one, so I'm gonna chime in.
Chime in. By all
No,
means.
no.
Okay.
I mean, when you're
His teammates, like once he sees that, like they need me to help them out, like I can keep them safe, and then again, like, and this is gonna sound strange, but it's not. But he discovers that, like, he has an affinity, like taking care of like young girls, like
Yes.
Katie Pride,
Father-
Jubilee,
like a
and then,
fatherly-
a father figure, and like a fierce protectiveness,
like how Drax ended up kind of in Guardians.
yeah, like a fierce protectiveness, and it really humanizes him, and I love that. But I always think, like, it's pointed out now a little bit more than it used to be, but sure, he can't die if he gets shot or burned or blown up. He can't die, but he feels it.
Yes.
He knows what it's like to burn to death,
Yeah.
and he knows what it's like to get shot multiple times. He knows what it's like to get stabbed. Like, he's walking around with so much physical pain.
Well, and the
No
people,
wonder-
other people dying because they don't live as long. They don't
Yeah.
have the renewal. Like, so he has all of those, and
No
has
one's
to keep
lost
going.
as much as him. And so besides the adamantium that's gleamed onto his bones and that lifetime, 200 years of physical pain, and he just walks around that way. That's his starting point. And then, like, if he has a bad day, if his lunch is bad, that's piling it on.
Right.
Like, so no wonder he's always he's walking around like as this moody Canuck.
But that's why he's also a good mentor, is because he has lived all those lives
He's
or that lifespan.
he's seen it.
And
He's
so he
seen
can
it.
help Kitty and
And there's no one better to have your back than.
But he's also absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But I think there's a lot of other mutants or a lot of other X-Men that may have been okay, but I think he needed the team to straighten his stuff out.
absolutely.
Out of all of the others, they may have found something or found some way, but he had gone from where he was to the Weapon X stuff, government tool. Like, had he not arrived,
he was an animal that could barely,
Yes,
he would
I
barely
bet.
speak. He would barely,
he was like
and then-
grunting and doing.
And Professor X saw something in him and that he didn't see in himself, that he didn't think he could find. Yeah. And so I'll fan cast this because Chris Claremont wanted Bob Hoskins to play Wolverine. That's who we saw. Eddie Valiant from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. To me, though, the star of
Back in the day,
Mona Lisa. He's a great Bob Hoskins. And then Hugh Jackman was terrific. But if I could fan cast him, I'll say it right now, and time of recording. because the X-Men movie hasn't come out. If you listen to this from 10 years from now, but Zac Efron would be.
Danny DeVito still.
See,
Vito would be
I knew
great.
you were going to say
Vito-
that. I
Vito
see
would be
that
great.
picture all the time.
DeVito
Well,
would
he's
be
the
great.
size, though. He is literally the size.
I think
amazing.
Efron would have to squat, but I think Efron could embody him perfectly.
He's sure fit. Yeah, it would look
Yeah.
good.
But that's my 3 is Wolverine. If you guys have heard of him.
He was my 3, so I'm going to skip.
Excellent.
Out. You had some more.
Nice.
For him being your number 1, right?
Yeah, so on my number 1, I'll chit chat a little bit. But my number 3 was Rogue, but
Nice.
I kind of feel like Rogue Gambit because a lot of my Rogue. Well, that's not true.
I was gonna say nobody's mentioned
So
Gambit yet, which is
when I started with Rogue, she was was in Savage Land wearing the outfits. I can't help it with these. Like this is the age. Like everything was drawn a little pervy. Like
Yeah.
Rogue didn't exist before the Jim Lee redesign.
you were like 10 or 11.
Right. So she got the universally accepted best superhero colors of they switched it to the green, the yellow, and like the red like little
Red
X
X.
or whatever on there. So those are the best
Best
superhero
you can
colors.
have. But she didn't. She kept her leather jacket on.
But she kept the leather jacket on and those bright yellow gloves.
Had
and
to.
Had to use the gloves, obviously.
Didn't want to high five you and kill you.
Exactly. So, and then like the show made it even better because the accent, the voice acting in the show,
The best one.
it was so incredible. Like I loved her. I loved, like even as a child, like I felt the torture involved between her, like Rogue and Gambit's relationship because like, they loved each other and they're like so much. But at that point, back in the day, before she could control it, which I'm kind of.
And didn't Gambit always come off as a little touchy feely to you too?
Oh my god!
So like that's how much he loves her. Is that like I'm fine. We'll work through this.
Yes, like his love language wasn't like, oh, Rogue flew to the store and got him his favorite licorice. Like that's not his love language. It would be like simple, like touchings or whatever, like that type of thing.
His powers be tactile with the cards and the
Yes,
game.
everything is kinetic energy.
Yeah,
so it's like it's weird. So, but her the power set and how like her only honest to goodness power is stealing powers, but the one she ended up getting permanently. And the stories behind getting them permanently, I just always thought it was a cool, like Carol, she has all the Captain Marvel stuff, short of all the crazy
that's
cosmic
informed,
stuff.
they've informed each other over the years, like their characters. They're ever since then they've been linked, even though they don't want to be.
Yeah,
they can't quit each other. They can't get out of each other's life as much as they want to.
because it's really jarring. Like it was weird because I started with this Rogue, right, and then I get to the point where I eventually go back and read and figure it out, and you have this book where the first thing that happens is Danvers like falling off this bridge or whatever because
Ambush.
she had been depowered completely, and they're like they have no idea what's going on, and then Rogue shows up with Mystique and the Brotherhood, and they're like, ha ha, right? But
We can do an episode one day about the 20 years where Marvel did not know what to do with Carol Danvers.
Yeah.
So they figured out that she's boss.
like, what's she been doing this whole time? Drinking? I don't know. Yeah.
I just read her first appearance the other night, where she's just a security chief at the military base that
Yep.
Captain Marvel's trying to infiltrate.
Yep. So that's it. Rogue
Rogue's
because of the
awesome.
cartoon, Rogue because of the
Great.
books, Rogue because of the redesign, Rogue all the way around. I love it. I mean, it probably should be Rogue and Gambit because their relationship played a
that counts.
big part into it.
Let's put Gambit in
John
there.
Romita Jr. do some great Rogue issues too, if I remember right. Besides Jim Lee also being the main one, but
Yeah.
Jim Lee drew a damn good Gambit too, Rick. Mm-hmm. Rick's not a Gambit fan.
Not at all.
We are huge Gambit fans
Not at all.
because we came up in the 90s.
Yep.
I think it's the cards.
Who also I think they probably bought each other's leather jackets for them. Like she's like, oh sugar, I'll get you a long one,
Sometimes they swap.
and I'll take like a half one.
Sometimes she wears the duster.
Yeah. All right. Whose turn is it?
That's
Matt.
Mine.
All right.
My third, I'll say, I'll cut it right now. Mystique.
Mystique's awesome.
Mystique. I've always loved. I've loved. Awesome. I loved her character design since she was a wee little lass, but
Another one never really had to change it either. It was just awesome from jump.
It was striking. That color of red hair against the blue skin that it was
Yeah.
always looked awesome.
plus it didn't hurt that she's been cast very well live action.
Oh yes,
You
Great.
can't say that she's not pretty live action.
Rebecca
but-
Romaine
Yes.
and Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah.
Yes, both of them.
Well, and if you think about it from a powers perspective, I viewed her always as kind of like she's kind of like a Black Widow, but she can actually change.
She
But
is
yes,
better than
so-
Black
right,
Widow
So
because
it's
she
like,
can.
She can infiltrate completely.
yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, I kind of wish I had her powers, man, because you could do anything. You could be anyone. You could go anywhere.
Yes.
You could just disappear, kind of.
Yeah.
And I like that, and they did it well in the movies where she could pass because she could be human if she wants, but she doesn't. She wears it proudly. She's like, no, I am. Come at me. And I also like in the 80s, her relationship with Destiny was always hinted at because you couldn't be explicit, but now her and Destiny are literally wife.
Yeah.
They're literally married. So that's been a whole like long arc thing too. And then of course she's Rogue's mom. So
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
imagine if your mom was a super villain.
There you go.
My mom is a supervillain.
Yeah. That's how to deal with it.
I know. I can tell you some stuff.
It just got this one just got dark.
Speaking of someone who may or may not be related, is my number 2 is Kurt Wagner's Nightcrawler.
Love that. This is one where I purposefully avoided on my list because another one design wise.
And we've talked about him earlier in the podcast. So,
Yeah, he's.
and he was a circus performer. Those are always
There
the
you
best.
go. You got to have the circus in there.
They're always the best superheroes.
When he went live action though, it was
love that.
terrific because he always explained
So
himself
well
every time. I am Kurt Wagner.
and the great Alan Cummings.
Yes,
So I don't even have a fan cast for him because it was so well done.
it was perfect.
Yeah.
But he has amazing powers too.
Great powers, and he can bamf, and he has the agility of a gymnast, plus his forked hands and feet that he can.
I told Craig if I had his powers, we wouldn't have any problems with, politicians or.
He
It would just be the smell of brimstone, right? And
Yep.
they would be
infiltrated
gone.
that. Yeah, the opening scene of X2, X-Men United.
That was cool.
Documents would be
Yeah.
returned.
Yeah, it's
And he takes shelter in a church. That's where they find him. Which is what Kurt does. He's very devout.
Yeah,
and a rapier, man. His rapier skills.
Oh, I mean, in the 80s, he had a 4-issue miniseries, in the mid 80s, where he just gets to be a full on adventurer swashbuckler, and it's terrific. He's the most charming of the X-Men until Remy was joined.
Yes.
But he could sweet talk anybody. Yeah. Well, I guess when you grow up looking like that and you learn how to own it, you're not self-conscious anymore, And and again, like his relationship, him and Wolverine's friendship is one of my favorite things about the X-Men comics.
Good choice.
Something we
Do you
kind of
think
glossed over. Oh, sorry.
no, I don't.
Something we kind of glossed over that's been fun in the X-Men, if you're a fan, is once they added the international X-Men, you're seeing in American comics, which is very rare, at least it was at that time, that there's dialect. Like there's Russian for Colossus and there's German for
And Claremont
Nightcrawler.
wrote it, yeah.
And even
again,
if it's just a buzzword here and there, it becomes familiar and it becomes part of your vocabulary, which as a kid, you want that in your
true.
life. Something that adds a little value besides the comic itself. Something you can use in the world or see in a movie or, I appreciate that.
when you actually read Banshee's Irish, yeah. You guys know who
Did it for Rogue too.
Banshee's brother is?
Yeah. Oh no, I was thinking of Havoc. Sorry.
Black Tom Cassidy.
That's right.
Just an aside. He's a very cool, very fun.
awesome.
Black Tom.
It's just like the pirate type.
Yep.
thing. He's a ne'er do well.
I totally
that's-
forgotten that, but yes, I remember it now.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
that's
crazy.
great.
My number 2. Rick, do you have a number 2?
Yes, and it's going to be an odd one, because that's how I am.
Good.
It's a villain.
Oh yes.
It's from the old days, and he's still popular and still interesting. It's the Juggernaut.
Yes.
But he's an X-Men character, but he's not a mutant.
Yep.
He's
Powered from the
supernatural.
the ruby or the
The Crimson Bands of Sidorak or Sitarek, whichever it is, from Doctor Strange, which I thought was really a cool thing to add into to the X-Men mythology.
Kane Marco, right?
Yep.
Yes. And, of course, he has that helmet, which is reinforced to protect him from any mental attacks. So he's already physically totally impossible to stop. Now he's got that helmet on, so you can't attack
So
his
his
mind.
half brother cannot attack his mind.
Exactly, yes, that's right. Half-brother of Professor X.
Yep.
So I find that character to be interesting. He was always one of the most difficult battles that the early X-Men had.
Oh, formidable.
And they even, would leave you in a cliffhanger where he had entered the room or, what you're going to do now. I don't know, something about him makes him exciting to me. And that's the magic element.
He's
maybe.
called the Juggernaut, and he backs that name up. That's something.
It's awesome.
The Juggernaut is here.
Unfortunately, in the film version, they didn't quite pull it off, but they tried.
He got his own back a little bit in Deadpool 2,
Yeah, a little bit.
portrayed by Ryan Reynolds there as well.
Yep, same thing.
Yeah,
It's good.
that's awesome.
It is. I'm worried now. My number 2. I don't want to interfere with yours.
Does he have? Well, I know your.
Did you? Is it 2?
His is
Yeah.
2. Yeah.
Go
we'll
ahead,
get to Matt's.
Matt, for 2.
I'm gonna take the duality of Iceman and
Human Torch.
no Pyro. Sorry,
Pyro.
The notes.
But I've always liked the older issues I picked up when I was a kid. I always those panels always drew me the most of them. Whatever they were, if either of them showed up or whatever. But
Iceman was so cool.
yes,
How he got around.
Yeah, he created his own sled.
Yeah.
He rode his own wave. It's awesome.
I always liked the fire powers were always cool, especially as a kid, and then the ice powers were even cooler. I mean,
Well, and that's
Ice,
where
man.
I know you guys don't do the manga thing, but there's in My Hero Academia.
yeah,
There's the guy where his dad, it's Endeavor. He's like, I don't want to go into the whole thing, but there's a guy that does fire. He self-contained. He's fire and ice, like one ability, like out of one hand. Todoroki.
Oh, it's cool.
He can do fire powers and then ice powers, and that's the duality of like his parents and stuff like that together. So, My Hero is very superhero-ish, but yes, and he's also one of the most interesting because he has to play off of his powers in the way that like he can like half melt something to make it like controlling.
I
both
like
of
the
them
idea
and
though
stuff.
where Iceman can actually freeze water vapor in the air.
In the air,
Pyro
yes.
needs the flame. He can't generate a flame.
yeah. He
Right.
has to have
He
the
needs to
lighter. He
create
has to have
flame.
a. He has to have a.
yeah,
a
and then
source.
he can manipulate flames that's created. Yeah, yeah.
So, yes, I agree. It's definitely not as cool as far as that goes. But I think that's generally, I mean, there's a lot of people that feel the same way as you as far as that
Yeah, they're
duality where, no, but I mean, it's a popular thing and it is cool. Like,
I am also a big fan of
opposites.
Sunfire, the
Yes,
total
yes, yes,
prick
yes.
from yeah.
Hiroshima.
But he had a great costume design. I love that. Well, go ahead. So we'll just say
would.
mine. Go. I'm sorry.
I had one more thing. I don't know if anyone else has read it. There was a rare story where there's a big problem with Iceman having been in battle, leaving behind all those ice sleds, and they start collapsing and falling and hurting people, and it being a big problem. And I don't remember how
just
it
leaves them
actually
there
was
all the time.
resolved. But at least it was an idea that probably needed to be addressed.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
No,
remember how it was resolved though.
It's a good idea. It's been addressed multiple
leaving them
times.
behind.
It may have been like the first instance of doing that because the whole Superman v Batman was about accountability.
Yeah.
Like that. The same thing happened in the Marvel universe where they had the whole reason they had the Accords was the Wachovia, whatever stuff. Sokovia in the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been done a few times, but that may have been like the first appearance,
first time I ever-
appearance of superhero accountability.
And some of the I was gonna say some of the characters are really, the farther out you go, they get a little weird. I was gonna bring up Zorn or
Yeah.
Zarn, who has a brain that's a star.
yeah,
he can collapse it and cause
inside that helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that the
Beak Boy.
That's
Big boy.
wild, yeah.
no what was the girl? No girl or nobody girl or
That is that the one that he was with.
no of
Oh.
the character.
Wow, this is beyond me.
No, they went
recognize
out
these.
there.
Yeah, they get
Yeah.
once the 2000s hit, they're just like wheels are off,
Of
folks.
course, I'm a Legion of Superheroes fan, and there's nothing weirder than people like Stone Boy.
Yeah, yeah.
Turns into stone and doesn't do anything.
Everybody gets a every noun
or
gets that
Beak.
superhero.
You know, there's so many odd ones.
Beak, I think that's what I was thinking of.
No girl.
No girl.
No girl. That's what I was thinking of.
Man, not even trying.
Nope.
Do you, for number 2,
I'll just
do you have Kitty?
I'll just say my number 1 is Kitty Pryde.
Okay, my number 2 was. Sorry.
My absolute all-time favorite X-Men.
Yeah.
There's never been anybody close. She came in as this 14-year-old kid into the mansion, and with all these grown-up people that she didn't know, she has to start school here. She's Jewish. She's already an outcast. She has to start school here with these people that she doesn't know, and she hangs. She hangs in the battles. She hangs in the with her grown peers. She is always there. She's gone through different names like Ariel, Sprite, Shadowcat,
Shadow.
and then she's like, you know what?
Shadowcat, yeah.
I am Kitty Pryde. Like, psh, I'm my own superhero. But she's also so much fun.
She is.
Like there's a whole issue where she's just trying on different clothes. The Christmas issue where the Brood attacks and she's alone in the and she
John Byrne, yeah.
and she beats him by herself. She survives the attack. She's always useful in battle. There was an arc where once the New Mutants started, Charles Xavier was like, "You're a kid. You're their age. You need to be on their team." And she was like, "Are you kidding me? Like I've been rolling with the X-Men, helping you guys out. And you think you're gonna?" And after like 2 issues, he's like, "Okay, I was wrong. Wow,
That is great.
The New Mutants are fine, but you are next level." Yeah, and
Sweetheart. I love her relationships, character design.
She's so caring. She's
Brought
so
a pet to the X-Men.
Lockheed.
Oh, Lockheed.
Lockheed's awesome.
Lockheed adopted her as much as she adopted him, and we can address the she said the N-word twice, which that's more than you should.
What?
Yeah, Chris.
When?
Once during God kills. God saves, man kills, and one other time it's like, come on, kitty. But yeah.
I did not know that.
I did not know that. This
It happened, but it was written. I mean, as whatever as it was for a purpose. She was talking about persecuted people. Like, what if somebody called you this or this or this? And it's like, well, you could just say the N-word, Kitty. We'd be fine with that. But I don't want to concentrate on that. I didn't want to gloss over it either.
It's perhaps more because Chris Claremont in English has
and I think that was it, because it was never anything malicious. It was never anything. It was just there. But like I said, like she eventually got supplanted by, I think she got supplanted by Jubilee narratively. And especially in the cartoon, Jubilee was a new character, and they used her instead. And I was never a fan.
Her ability was always so lame. Like, I liked her, but I didn't understand how she'd be useful.
And it was also like, but it showed how cool Kitty was, because like they were the same age when they started, and Jubilee was annoying.
Yes.
And Kitty was never annoying. Like, she's a kid that you'd want to have around. Jubilee, she's a kid that you just want to quit bothering you.
And I loved the casting in the movies. Like, I thought Ellen Page.
Oh yeah, Ellen Page was a great Kitty
casting.
Yep.
Yeah. Lana Condor
by herself, just like the Brood.
Lana Condor's Jubilee was great, but she didn't get to talk or do anything.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite X-Men. It has been since I can remember, since I was a kid. I think, and plus when I was a kid, she was the closest to my age than all the other ones. So it's like, oh yeah, this would be what it's like to hang out with all these cool.
Right.
And Wolverine liked her the best.
Yep.
And I was just like, you want Wolverine to like you the best.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want him to say it, you guys, but you want him to like, yeah. I mean,
it was so weird. Like, he's just got one of those personalities where you want him to
he checks on her first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's so cool, and he's such like a see, that's the perception. Like, the perception is he's a loner, but he's there because he absolutely needs to be, right? Mm-hmm. So, but then he looks so cool, and like the people walking in, you could imagine like, oh, that's going to be the one that's tough to. He's going to be the one I can't reach, right?
Right.
So I want to be his best friend.
And they just connected, and it's always been. I've always thought it was a great relationship.
So on mine, 2 was Kitty Pryde, and 1 was Wolverine. So I'm done. Those are my favorites. So did you have a favorite, Rick?
I was
you'd be next.
Kitty Pryde, but after you told me
Really?
the word, I decided not.
Oh no!
No, I'm going Jean Grey. I'm just saying that.
That's only for the historical aspect. It's there.
I'm just teasing.
So
I was good to say.
Really, so Kitty Pryde's yours as well?
No, he's a Jean
Grey. Really,
Jean
is.
Grey.
Awesome. As a boy, I don't know. Something clicked with me in that character. How they drew her, how they had her speak. It must have been very simple. Because
I liked her original design too, with like
light.
the glasses that like came out.
But I kind of had a crush on her, and I followed her through her whole story, and it was very tragic in the end. When I saw the Dark Phoenix saga, and it built up and rewarded me for being a fan of hers.
Yeah.
And also, the thing that really stood out to me in the saga is when all the X-Men were in danger and everyone was going to die and there was no hope, she said, "You all go to the back. I'll take care of this." And she saved everyone at the cost of her own life. And to me, that made me like her even more.
Yeah. No, it was that part was definitely very, very.
And
cool.
that was a death that lasted for a while too.
And then she had to put up with Scott cheating on her with her clone, Madeline later.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cheating, though.
Well, it wasn't like fair. I didn't think that he went to an exact duplicate of her and then
he certainly has a type.
Forgot her.
Yeah, no kidding.
He certainly has a type.
Yes, that's a good point. But anyways, I think Jean is a comic hero or heroine in the exact way that we hope they will be, and that they'll give up everything for everyone else. She
Didn't even think about it either.
right.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Marvel girl, Jean Grey.
But I feel like she was never written like in a, and I don't mean this to be offensive, like it wasn't like in a motherly way. It was just like she was just a badass.
She was never maternal.
Yeah, it wasn't. But I'm saying a lot of times,
Yeah.
you know, it can be written that way cheaply or whatever. She was always just like,
She's just like, I can do this.
Famke's not
you
bad
guys.
either in the film. Famke Janssen.
Famke Janssen, yeah.
She's not bad in the film either.
yeah, I think she did great.
Didn't hurt.
All right, Matt, favorite X-Man.
It's Eric. It's always been Eric.
That's right.
It's always Eric Lyncher. It's always Magneto.
Yep.
The great.
That is, what I love about him is he doesn't take anything from anyone. Like he always, and he sees things through. He gets things done. He manifests things, and I mean, who wouldn't want to have his abilities?
His abilities are pretty cool.
I mean, he can manipulate metal on the other side of the planet,
Yeah.
and it's like
The planet itself.
the planet itself.
Yeah, he could. I was
iron
gonna say
in
he
your
could change
blood,
the
the iron
poles if he
content
wanted
in
to,
your
but he.
blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that always
And again, talk about a design that never had to be changed.
no.
great
That curvy
Great
helmet.
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 Yep.
I have to say I didn't mind, even though most of the time when it is like the color scheme itself, I was just like red and purple, odd, but very cool.
Regal kind of.
Right, but I liked the gray too. The gray and white change.
That really worked. Ian McKellen said they asked who his favorite character he's ever played was, and he said Magneto because he dresses so well.
It is. It's great.
Yeah. It's a great. Magneto's a great one.
Gandalf has a dress, kind of. So
Yeah, he walks around that. It's gotta be hard to get around in that. If we're talking favorite villains though, too, I've got to mention Mr. Sinister. I absolutely adore
Such a good one.
Essex.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be happy with the new movie, I guess, because that's the rumor.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope that he's peacocking the whole time. I hope he comes in the room and says, "Look at me." Yeah, I want 70s Bowie when I get Mr. Sinister. That's what I
they
want.
get to. I mean,
I want glam rock.
I really hope they take advantage of the time frame, the timeline, and like let it.
Yeah,
I mean,
play out over.
Was
It'll
it
be
Bryan
like Timothy
Cranston that
Chalamet?
said he wanted to play him?
Timothy Chalamet would be great. A few years ago, John Hamm was the rumor, but I
Yeah.
think they're going a different way.
he's aging. out.
Bryan Cranston came out and said he wanted to play it. I don't know if
Jesus,
Great too.
all
I
these
mean-
fantastic people are too old to do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I guess you could de-age them at this point, but that'd be kind of
Yeah,
not really. I don't know.
there's so many actors they don't.
Yeah, they don't need to.
No.
If Harry Styles hadn't already been a great Star Fox, I think he'd be a great Mr. Sinister. I want androgynous, come in,
Yeah,
just be fabulous, and then do some just messed up genetic testing that you don't tell anybody about.
yep, and that's fun. That was cool. Also, how they had that. Yeah, just read the new Hickman stuff, everybody, because it all plays in.
And the Hellions is the best take on Mr. Sinister and the best spinoff of all the Hickman era X-Men books.
that's probably how Wells got the Amazing
Yeah,
Spider-Man job. Yeah, it's good work.
So that's all I got.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything about the X-Men?
A big fan of the X-Men comics.
Good stuff. You good, Rick?
They got me
I'm
through
good.
they in fifth grade we had to write our own autobiography, which I don't know why because nobody has any life then. But the cover for me, I just copied a Jim Lee thing of all the X-Men and just drew it. I don't know why that was the choice, but got a good grade on the book. So
There you go.
Can I
I
throw in
fudged
one?
a lot of facts in that
Sorry.
book.
Yeah.
You fudged a lot of facts?
Yeah.
Can I throw in one other thing we kind of glossed over, and that is when we got to the Roy Thomas Neil Adams era of the original X-Men, not only were the Sentinels really cool, but their Savage Land adventure with
Yes.
Star is like not to be missed, I don't think, if you're an X-Men fan. I just really thought that was a fan. And they even went back to it in the stories. You know, there's
Oh yeah, Savage Land lasted. I just issue 59 was such a come down after Neil
That's where
Adams.
Sauron came from, right? And all that stuff. Because I remember that iconic cover that had Rogue and Magneto in the Savage Land.
and there's an Angel Sauron battle. And
Yeah.
Man, between like Zeppelin, Bakshi, and the X-Men, the 70s were a big time for a Tolkien revival.
Have you seen Frodo?
It's nice.
It's
he'd make a good Wolverine.
He would actually.
Nice.
hilarious.
He would.
That's awesome. I think that's going to wrap it up for our X-Men episode. X-rated, though. But like I said earlier, if you have suggestions, anybody that's listening, for those 2008 to 2018 X-Men stories and books, send them our way. Give us comments because I'd like a chance to read those. It is kind of a...
Those were our Outback years.
Yeah,
So
those are the blank spots. But we appreciate you listening, and have a good one.
Beware Chris Claremont at cons. You guys have a very good day.
See you, everybody.